So it's now Tuesday morning, February 9th, and the product of bromination, which is labeled DCL-10-65B, has been sitting in the desiccator for 3 days over the weekend. And so I'm going to remove that product. That's the right one. And we want to get a mass on it and transfer it to one of these vials. So I've prepared some little weighing paper funnels, and I got my spatulas, and I've labeled a vial DCL-10-65B so we can transfer this. So the first thing we want to do is get a mass on the beaker and the vial, so we can get an accurate purified % yield. So we're looking at 10.416 grams on the beaker, 10.416, and the vial is 6.092 grams. So 10.416 and 6.092. So it went down from 10.650 to 10.416 grams, so some of that was moisture. Going to put away the 50 ml beaker. So I'm going to put this vial in my test tube rack. Equip it with a little funnel. I just want to break that up a little bit. Looks like it's fairly powdery. It was needles. It's still needles, but it's kind of fine needles. We're also going to measure a mass spectrum. And I grabbed a couple of mass spec kits. So I'm going to take KBR kit number 6 here and pull out my agate mortar and pestle and my pellet die. Stick the collar on there, get that ready. So I'm also going to take a little bit of this solid out and put it in the mortar and pestle ready for a KBR pellet. That's plenty. And we'll try to transfer the rest of it into the vial for use for NMR later and melting point. It's going to have a little trouble getting through that opening. I'll have to help it through. We're not going to be able to get quantitative transfer here because the solid is sticking to the spatula, among other things. A little static. Quite a bit of static, in fact. But we've got plenty of compounds, so that shouldn't be a problem that we don't get all of it. It's still pretty much going to fill that vial. I'll reach in there and try to grab the last of it. You can see the challenge. This solid is really fluffy. Wants to get everywhere. So I'm not worried about losing a little bit since I got a really full vial. Tap that down and try to recover some of this spilled. Good enough. I'll set that aside for later use. And we're going to grind this up. So that it sticks to the mortar and pestle. You can see that's well stuck. I can tip upside down, it's not going anywhere. And now I have my KBR in the desiccator. We're going to take one scoop. And we're going to use that KBR as sandpaper to scrape the compound off the mortar and off the pestle. And also grind up the KBR a little finer, so it'll fuse better and form a nice pellet. When I'm through, I should have a relatively free-flowing mixture. It doesn't stick anymore. That looks pretty good. Bouncing around a little bit. So now I want to a little micro spatula to fill that well. Always using between 1/3 and 1/2 of the total mixture, closer to 1/3 usually. Tap that. Try to get it to settle so it's uniformly covering the bottom. And then we'll put that top piece in. To get this in there without allowing it to open up, and clamp it shut. And that clamped fairly easily. I may need to tighten that a little bit. Two additional funnels here that I want to avoid getting contaminated with solid that was floating all over the place. Yep, I was able to get that out with my hands, so I think I'd like to tighten that just a little bit. It takes a little more effort. Hopefully we get a good pellet. It's a little thick, a little opaque. Now let's see if we can get a decent IR. Wake one of these instruments up. Make sure there's nothing in that chamber. We got a blank. I like this one for KBR pellets. It sits on there nicely. Welcome. Yeah, while we're waiting for that, try to scrape some of this solid off there, because I may use the residue of what's in the speaker to measure the melting point. Because there's a fair bit left in there. I'm going to get rid of this guy. Go away, bishop net. Ignore that. Looks like someone shut this down. So we're opening up Omnic. That computer is being mighty slow. Very slow. Windows has recovered from an unexpected shutdown again. Go away. It's probably a power outage. So our experiment is the IS5 standard. If we click on that, we'll notice it says this is a default experiment file, which is good. And we want to collect a background. Background looks normal. Got our CO2 in the middle, our hydrocarbon, and our water. So that's fine. We don't need to save that. And now we can collect sample. And this is DCL-10-65B- I think it's -4. I think I took 3 different, well, 65B. Maybe it's just -2. Can't remember how many mass specs I took on this. DCL-2-65B-2. Let's assume that 65B-1 was the GC mass spec. Prompts us to put our sample in there. And we can OK that. Rescan. So that pellet was pretty thick, which you can see in the fact that we've got 0% transmittance in several places. Not great resolution here. So I can use it probably. I'm going to do a baseline correction. Baseline is pretty well crap. Drag that bar up there. But it's still not a very good spectrum. Too thick. So we're not going to be able to use this. I'm going to save it anyway. As it's usual, it's pointing at JOChem. So we're going to cancel that. So let's take that out of there. I'm going to push that pellet out. And try to make one that's got a little thinner. I may need to add some more KBR, but I think it just got too thick. I'm going to put less compound in this time, or less mixture in this time. Tap it so that it's uniformly distributed. And maybe need a little bit more to get it to the edges. That should be a nice thin pellet. And what I will do is increase the, screw this down a little tighter so it's much tighter when I close it. So it takes a lot more effort. That'll hopefully get that to fuse more nicely. Fortunately, I've got plenty to try again. Let that sit for a bit. Now hopefully this time we got a glassier pellet. Yeah, definitely a little bit more transparent. That's going to give a better quality spectrum. We don't need to collect a new background since we just took one just a couple of minutes ago, so we'll just stick that sample in there. And we'll hit collect sample. Stop with your bishop net. This is now